Sleigh bells ring, are you listening? In the lane, snow is glistening. Oh, hi there. Hi, everybody. This is Café IBTTA. I'm Pat Jones. My guest today is Trish Hendren. Trish serves as Executive Director of the Eastern Transportation Coalition, a partnership of over 180 state transportation agencies, toll authorities, and public safety organizations from Maine to Florida, who keep people and goods moving throughout one of the world's busiest transportation corridors. Under Trish's leadership, the coalition has embarked on and enhanced initiatives related to incident management, traveler information, supply chain performance, freight planning, truck parking, toll reciprocity, connected and autonomous vehicles, and funding alternatives. Trish, welcome to Cafe IBTTA. It's great to have you with us.
Right. Thanks, Pat. I'm excited to be here and reflect on this year that thankfully is coming to a close, talk a bit about transportation, and hopefully have a coffee shop-like discussion with you and our guests today. So thank you.
All right. Well, this is Cafe IBTTA, where we drink coffee and talk about things that are interesting, relevant, uplifting, and fun. And I've got my holiday theme mug here and my holiday theme background. Today, a special shout out to my colleague, Wanda Clayman, IBTTA's Deputy Executive Director. Wanda is now in her 18th year with IBTTA, initially joining us in 2003 to handle a short-term consulting assignment. Wanda discovered a great fondness for the members and the industry and decided to stay and has been with us ever since. Wanda's influence has touched nearly every aspect of IBTTA: meetings, marketing, operations, technology, sponsorships, membership, and more. Wanda, thanks for all you do. And this is membership renewal time. We sent the membership renewal packets in late October, so you should have received your packet by now. If you have any questions, please contact Terry Langford, Manager of Business Development and Membership. And visit our 2021 membership renewal page to learn more about what IBTTA has accomplished on your behalf this year. We have a lot of testimonial videos on that page, and I especially call your attention to the testimonial by Emanuela Stokke, our 2018 president. You can't look at that short video without feeling an enormous sense of pride in IBTTA and all the work we've accomplished together. Take a look, and thank you very much. Also, before we move on to the interview, I have a special announcement from the Council of Platinum Sponsors Subcommittee on Cybersecurity. Here's their message. With the recent events surrounding the widely popular products SolarWinds, the following information may assist you in review of possible vulnerabilities. SolarWinds Orion product is impacted when malicious code is injected into their product, opening a backdoor to execute jobs and transfer files. The links below provide the list of products affected and those not believed to be involved. And those links, which are mentioned in this memo, include the Department of Homeland Security, the SolarWinds Security Advisory, and several others. And we will post those in a prominent place on IBTTA's website so you can protect yourselves. Well, we are taking your questions and we want to get started right away. So in the chat function, select all panelists and attendees and type one word or phrase that describes your feelings about performance-based decision-making, okay? Keep in mind, Trish is a self-described data hound, so we want to know what you feel about performance-based decision-making. What do we have here? It is the way. Yes, Rafael Hernandez. That's right. Improvement, fair, accountability. The only way to make decisions. Okay, Jim Trogdon. Accountable. Beautiful. Boy, we're getting some great responses. Need to have meaningful data. Yeah, what is that, Trish? Garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yeah.
Must be properly informed. Good. We're getting your thoughts and feelings about performance-based decision-making. Necessary tool. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Data integrity is key. Verifiable. Yep. or verifiable. We're missing a E there, Carrie Witt. Spelling, we won't judge on the spelling. All right, good job, everybody. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the half hour. But first, Trish, not some of our viewers may not be aware of what the Eastern Transportation Coalition is and does. So would you give us a brief summary, a little high level view of it?
Sure. Now, whenever this question comes up, Pat, I always think of the blind man and the elephant, because a lot of people are engaged in the coalition, but very few know kind of all that we do and, quite frankly, who we are. So I appreciate the question. We basically started 25 years ago, and today we are a collection of 18 states going from Maine to Florida, including Alabama and Tennessee. And in that 18 states, I am giving DC statehood, just for those in DC. Which we have actually, Pat, your picture is quite relevant because it's snowing here in the DC area today. So this group, we really were established to improve the movement of people and goods. And what we are is this collaboration of state DOTs, MPOs, toll authorities, transit agencies, port authorities. So it really is a multimodal, multi-jurisdictional group. And you might think, well, why was this group of states and agencies come together? And it's a pretty simple answer. The Eastern Seaboard is really the economic engine of our country. So we have over 110 million people, a third of all vehicle miles traveled, a fifth of our roads, is 40% of our GDP. So if we want our country to work well, we got to make sure this part of our country is working well. So it's very exciting to have this group to come together. And, that all sounds good, but, how do we work, right? So we're basically guided by an executive board, which is the 18 CEOs of the DOTs, and then a steering committee of the senior managers. And I bring that up because we're very much of a boots on the ground, what are the needs today kind of organization. And that has turned us into kind of three main areas that we focus on. So one is operations, which I always say is the heartbeat of the coalition. That's really where we started, events and incidents that would cross state lines. How do we get better information to our travelers? And then we have freight. Again, huge freight corridor. So how do we make sure that freight is moving well? Availability for truck parking, are we planning well? And so freight is a key area. And then finally, it's innovation. And innovation is technology. How do we pay for transportation? Again, looking at tolling, mileage-based usage fees. So we kind of are this elephant with lots of different things, and it's about bringing people together, getting information into members' hands, either through data, which has already come up in the question about performance management, and also getting kind of how do you use data? And then it's just an opportunity to bring resources into the Eastern Seaboard. That's where I grew up. So I'm a little biased thinking this is a pretty important part of our country. So that's who we are.
It is a very important part of our country, and we're glad to have you here, Trish, to talk a little bit about that. Now, in the opening question, I asked our audience to tell us their thoughts and feelings about performance-based decision-making. You are, as I said, a self-described data geek or data hound. I want you to say something about a quote, something you said at our Transportation Visioning Summit several years ago. You said that over the last decade, our industry, thanks to probe data, has made the shift from evaluating capacity to evaluating reliability. Data can give users the ability to make better informed decisions and give us the ability to make the case for transportation investments in a manner that reflects what people want. Tell us more about that, Trish.
So I usually don't confess so early in a conversation that I'm a data geek. So, but you're calling me out, so I'll just confess it is true. And it is one of a key reason why I was so excited and just honored to take this job at the coalition. Because when I first got into the transportation field, we talked about level of service, A through F. So A is you're on the highway, speeding along within the speed limit, of course. And F is you're basically stopped in a parking lot on the highway thinking, why am I in a parking lot? So it was easy to understand, but that's not what people care about. They care about, am I going to get to the doctor's on time? Am I going to get to my shift on time, or avoid the daycare fee if I'm picking up my kids late? So it actually was in the tolling industry where this kind of came out, and this being travel time reliability. That's what people want to know. And it was the New York, New Jersey toll authorities. They created Transmit, which is using toll transponder data to understand travel time. So basically, again, with the type of organization the coalition was, we learned from them and we said, let's bring this to the states. Let's bring this to all highways and arterials. So what we did is we really pushed innovation by bringing vehicle probe data into the field. And I know you're thinking, oh my goodness, tell me more about vehicle probe data, right? It sounds exciting. So it's basically a way for us to know travel time and travel time reliability. So we created a marketplace where people could purchase data, our members, and we used our economies of scale to drive down the cost for our members. To make data more accessible, we brought in various vendors to have competition so people would have better opportunities and choices, because everyone's a little bit different. So we wanted to give people options. And then we also validate the data. I think that came up in the chat, like if it's garbage in, garbage out, that doesn't help anyone. So we kind of serve as this oversight and kind of making sure that we're informing folks of what's good and what are some drawbacks of the different data. So the result is we now talk about our transportation system as travel time. I mean, time is just, we have clocks everywhere, right? We're always worried about time. And we have to understand, as the transportation industry, that's what people want. That's what they care about. So when I say I'm a data geek, it's because of the power that that information can give us to really respond to what people are asking for and work on that quality of life.
Trish, you and the Eastern Transportation Coalition have been gathering data in another effort, the mileage-based user fee pilot for trucks. And I understand that the coalition just wrapped up its first pilot program on MBUF with truckers. What can you tell us about that?
So it was the country's first multi-state truck pilot. And I have to say, it almost didn't happen. So I reached out to the trucking industry and said, you know, the country and Congress is looking at replacing the fuel tax with a distance-based fee. And a lot of that work is on passenger cars, which again is incredibly important. But we saw an absence of the trucking industry. So reaching out to the national and state associations, we said, you know, you guys should be engaged in this. And they said, no, don't want to do it. Don't like it, think it's a bad idea. We know what we need, increase the fuel tax. That's what we're pushing because it makes sense. So they're on board with having revenue for basically their office, which is our transportation system, but not very enamored with a distance-based fee. So I came back and said, I hear you, but if we don't have you at the table, then your complex environment, the regulations that you're operating under, the diversity of your industry, it won't be really brought to the forefront. So we got to a yes, and we had our first multi-state truck pilot, and it really showed the importance of having a truck-specific pilot and exploration, because what we found is that basically one rate will not work for trucks. And that's the approach for passenger vehicles. You kind of use average miles per gallon for the country or a state to come up with your per mile rate. But for trucks, that's not going to work. Again, that diversity. And also the number of miles they drive, we saw that it would really have strong incentives or rewards for companies that had fuel inefficient vehicles. And it would penalize companies that invested in new technology. And that's probably not a good policy decision. So that was not really known. So we put a big spotlight on that. And there's also some existing regulations for the trucking industry that can help us think forward on this transition if it does happen. And we still don't know if it is the right path, but we have, and again, this is, I guess we can use this at a cocktail party, but we're gonna use it for our coffee shop. So this is your trivia for the day, IFTA, which is the International Fuel Taxation Agreement. So IFTA is this national approach to when a truck fuels up in one state and drives in many, that how that fuel tax is redistributed to where the miles are. So it's kind of, you know, a lot of similarities with the mileage-based usage fee. So let's learn from that. So a lot of really key insights from that effort. So I applaud the trucking industry for being at the table to explore this. We got a lot more work to do, but it was a really important first step.
There's an old expression that freight doesn't vote, and you're bringing mileage-based user fee pilot for trucks into the picture helps to correct that, helps to give the freight industry a voice at the table. Hey, we have a question here, and thank you very much. First question: how will electrification of cars and especially trucks impact the model? And I guess he's talking about the mileage-based user fee model.
No, sure. It's a good question because we have many changes in the transportation field. We have our funding challenge, but we also have technology of how our vehicles move changing with the transition to electric vehicle and hybrid. And I think a key aspect of this transition to keep in mind is the operating cost of your vehicle really is the fuel. So if the decision is made to get an EV or a hybrid, there's still a lot of cost savings to the individual, to the owner from the fuel that you're not purchasing. So when we're talking about the fuel tax, that is, a key revenue source for the roads and bridges in which all vehicles, trucks and cars are using. It's very thin part of the overall cost of operating. So as we're engaging with EV owners and EV manufacturers, we need to make sure that we're keeping kind of the full picture of the cost of using our transportation system in mind, because the first reaction might be, well, this is going to really hurt the EV industry. And the answer should be no, the EV industry is using the roads and bridges like everyone. So everyone needs to play a part. So let's do it in a way that makes sense from the policy that we want for our country and by individual states. And I think that outcome that meets these multiple needs is possible.
Our guest today is Trish Hendren. She is the Executive Director of the Eastern Transportation Coalition, and we're taking your questions. Use the chat function and select all panelists and attendees, and please send us your questions. And while we're waiting for yours, I have another question. Trish, we've talked a lot about data and sort of the hard science kinds of things. You published an op-ed in the Eno Center for Transportation last May, and in it you said, "Throughout my career, my professional connections have most informed how I see and understand the critical issues facing our work. Each class in school or conference session is an opportunity to connect with people who bring varying perspectives to these challenges. Understanding what the future may hold requires different voices from varied backgrounds." Trish, tell us more about that.
I think a great example of what I was trying to convey in that op-ed is the coalition's Highway Operations Group, affectionately known as HOGS. And I grew up in the DC area, so I grew up a huge, let's make sure I get the new name right, Washington football team fan. And in the 80s, we had the Hogs, which were, I still think, one of the best offensive line, or, that's been there in football. So I love it that I'm in an organization that we have our own Hogs. So why am I bringing up Hogs when you're talking about nurturing your network? So what I really mean by that sentiment is solutions that are going to work have to be built off of a range of views, a range of perspectives in order to have an outcome that will stick and will make sense to many. And so what this HOGS group does is it basically looks at incident management, and it brings together your planners, your policymakers, your management with the boots on the ground folks. So the fire, the police, the EMT, the traffic management center, and quite frankly, each of them approach an incident as if they are in charge. And they have a key role that they are in charge of. But how do you all come into that event and making sure that people are staying safe and that the road is cleared? So what we do is we bring all those different views and different chiefs into the room and say, okay, let's talk about your different roles. And there's actually a great video out there. I wrote down his name to make sure I get it right. So Tom Martin, who is a first sergeant at Virginia State Police, he has a video, and he has a panel of guests he's going to be talking to. And basically that panel of guests, Tom puts on a hat and says, "I'm from Virginia DOT. I own and operate the roads. I'm in charge." And then he puts on a fireman's hat and does the same thing. The point is that with this group of people together, close the room, close the door, and you say, okay, what is your role? How do we work together? And everyone realizes we have the same common outcome that we're working towards, and everyone's role is important. So it gets that kind of that network, that diversity. So then when you're at an incident, who is there. So it's also just kind of that personal connection. And then in that room, you can also find those pain points that just have been festering at times. So for example, we had one of these meetings in Vermont last year, and there was a challenge with the police knowing which towing company to reach out to that had the right equipment for a heavy towing event. It's a very simple thing, but getting people in the room, you find a solution, and you kind of work it out. And so that's what I mean by that network. Like the more that we bring other views into our own circle, I think that's how we're going to really find the solutions that the complex and exciting field of transportation is going to need. So it takes a skill set and you got to work at it. It's easier just to talk to people who agree with you, but that's not really is what's going to move change, I think, in our field. So that's what I was trying to convey in that op-ed.
A couple of years ago, we had a group of French toll road operators come visit IBTTA, and they came to the Washington, D.C. area, and we were able to give them a tour of the Virginia Transportation Operations Center. And while we were there, we got to go down onto the ground floor, and they were doing a tabletop exercise with people from fire departments and police departments all around the region, sitting there walking through a disaster response. And it was really powerful to see the people from all these different disciplines participating in that exercise. It sounds a lot like what you're talking about.
Very much so.
We are taking your questions. Please use the chat function and select all panelists and attendees. Trish, let's move back to technology and mobility. I mentioned 4 years ago, IBTTA put on this Transportation Visioning Summit in which we invited the executives from more than a dozen different transportation associations to participate. And during that discussion, you said something that really resonated with me. You said, one advantage that technology brings is that we may finally break the vehicle-centric view of transportation. The big shift we're going to see is that you're no longer connected to your vehicle, you're connected to mobility. We're not selling the concept of get in your car, we're selling mobility. And the question is, what does this infrastructure look like and how does it change because we are not vehicle centric anymore? Tell us more, Trish.
All right, so I have another confession. So I say I like data, but I also like Venn diagrams. So the way I look at, again, the statement I made several years ago is we have these three very strong currents in our transportation field. So if everyone kind of imagines a Venn diagram, the first kind of circle is drivers, and our drivers are changing. They're changing a lot because of just things that they are asking for. So we all have this cell phone in our hand, right? And that cell phone has more memory, I think 1 million times more memory, if I get the number right there, than the lunar module that sent men to the moon. So our drivers, our users of our system are changing. They're asking for more. They want choices. They want information. It kind of goes back to what I was saying about travel time reliability. And I have 2 young girls, and just I can tell when they get to the point where they're driving, how they interact with the transportation system is going to be different. So they're already like my IT specialist, right? So how they're going to, what they're going to ask of our field is going to be different. So our drivers are changing. They're actually changing, I was saying, to customers. So we call them drivers. We got to get rid of that and call them customers. So that's kind of your one circle. So the other one is this technology tsunami, I would say. And I don't mean to sound scary or have a bad thing, but it's just an incredible change of our field with technology, with connected and automated vehicles. And what do we do as a field? How do we basically take that change and make a mobility future versus just a road and bridge future, or kind of more think about our as a system, not just infrastructure. And then the third part that is kind of the sad part, I think changing our drivers into customers is great and technology is great, but we do have a very notable revenue challenge for our field. So revenue is projected to go down. So what do we do with this kind of 3 circles of our drivers, technology, and funding? And that's where I really think comes out of that is a new way for our country to provide mobility, not car trips, not transit trips, but choices, and how we present just the incredible importance of transportation. I mean, why are we in this field? It is really to open opportunities. It is to improve quality of life. That's the true spirit of what transportation is. It's not, as I said in that quote, get in your car. It is like have an ability to go where you need to go in a way that is cost effective, that you have some choices. And this is what makes our field so challenging, but I think also so rewarding.
this is a time of year when people start to think about making New Year's resolutions. You know, I'm going to take on this great new task or a new hobby, or I'm going to change my behavior in some way. And maybe we should take a page from your book, Trish, and say, everybody who's listening to the sound of my voice should say, why am I in this business in the first place? What is my motivation for being in the transportation industry? I think that that could be a good introspection for all of our members and everybody who's involved in transportation. Trish, you talked about changes as a result of things that are happening in technology and data. I like to ask our guests, what are some of the biggest changes you think we will see in transportation over the next 2 years, especially in the wake of COVID and so many changes that we've seen already, even in tolling. We've seen a rapid shift to all electronic tolling at some agencies that were previously collecting cash and working from home. What other kinds of big changes do you see in transportation over the next couple of years?
So I think we are at a point right now just of incredible opportunity for the transportation field. So you know, when you hear about transportation in the news and in the public sector, it's about something that's gone wrong. So there's a bridge incident, there's this happened wrong. But right now, when people are talking about transportation, it's this realization that it is the things we're doing every day that's enabling those packages to come to your front door, to get that toilet paper everybody wanted in the grocery store, to get soon the vaccines into our arms, right? And what is making that happen is a transportation field. And that is something we have this opportunity with the public awareness of the value of transportation like we've never had before. And it's just, we're very fortunate in this country that we have a reliable transportation system. It's actually a pretty good system. So, but people just kind of take it for granted that it's there when they walk out the door. And so now we have an opportunity, I think, in the next 2 years to say, look, you can see the value of transportation. So let's talk about what you want from the system. Let's listen to what they're saying. And this is also the time to think about how we're going to pay for it. We have a new administration coming in. We have new legislation coming about, reauthorization. So I think in the next 2 years, this is when we need to have that vision for what this transportation system can be in this country. We need to take the spotlight and do something with it in the next 2 years. And I think that we can, I think we will.
Trish, let's return to the mission of the Eastern Transportation Coalition and tell us about one of your favorite moments in your work with coalition members.
I was thinking about that the other day. I love this job because in one day I would do, like we had a tolling workshop yesterday, and then today we're talking about mileage-based usage fee. I'm here with you, Pat, and then we talk about travel information. So I think it's hard to pick a moment, I think. And I think it's the diversity of what we do that is so rewarding to me personally. But what makes me want to dive into work every day is when we hear from our members about what we're doing is helping them do their jobs better. That is what, to me, it makes everything, all the hard work worthwhile, is knowing that either information we put into their hand, the data that we made accessible to them, the connection just between two people that then enabled new solutions to come about. Those are just the things that I find incredibly rewarding.
Trish, I'm going to make a couple of announcements before we come back to you for your final words of wisdom. All right, get ready. So this is the final episode of Café IBTTA in season 1. We're going dark for the next 2 weeks for the holidays. You can watch reruns of the entire first season of Café IBTTA on YouTube, 29 episodes this year. Season 2 begins on January 6th, 2021, when our first guest is Mark Compton, CEO of the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission, who will by then be president of IBTTA. Later today, the Task Force on Diversity, Social, and Racial Inclusion holds its second book discussion on How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. That's at 3 o'clock Eastern Time today. Please join us. Tomorrow from 6 to 7:30 p.m., the Women in Tolling Holiday Soiree. Visit the IBTTA website for details on all IBTTA events. Well, Trish, as I said, this concludes the 2020 broadcast season for Café IBTTA. What final words of wisdom do you have for us before we sign off?
Well, I have to say, Pat, to you and your team, I appreciate you having these conversations with folks around the transportation field. I find them incredibly enjoyable. So I appreciate it. And I'm excited there's going to be a season 2. And I think given the time of year and your festive hat and your background, I think this is just a time to frankly pause. We're all tired. It has just been a brutal year. And someone reminded me just to every once in a while, just take a moment to pause and to, for me, I'm going to have young kids listen to like their laughter as they're out on the trampoline. It's the small things that really bring that joy. And I would give your IBTTA, the Women in Tolling, they held a meditation event or training. And I did that even though I was like, I'm going to stink at meditation. But even that, I encourage people to look at that if it's available online. It's, I think it was called Blue Sky Meditation. And I was like, well, maybe I can do that. And it's as simple, probably not today, given it's snowing outside, but just looking at the sky for 10 seconds and just appreciating. So I guess kind of not very eloquently said, but it's just take a pause, be kind to yourself. We're all tired and it's going to be 2021 and it's going to be a better year. So Happy New Year.
Trish, that's a great message. Pause, be kind to yourself, and be kind to one another. What a wonderful thing. Trish, I want to say thanks to you for being on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thanks to you, IBTTA members. We wish you happy holidays. Be safe, keep in touch, and we'll see you down the road. Thanks, everybody.